now we are kicking off the show. So I'm excited to have you here, Dan Burmawi. Did I say that correctly?
Yep.
Okay, great. Came across a few of your posts on X is how I found out about you. Then I saw your videos, and then I saw that you had this Project X, this Project EX. It's an organization that you formed. And this is what I was really interested in. So I see what you had pinned on social media where you state, I left two religions, Islam and Palestine. I am a convert twice over, and once from Islam to Christianity, once from Palestine to truth. And then you go on to say a lot more. You rejected Islam at 18 and etc. So I want to know more about your experience with Islam and also, more about your organization, this Project X, and what it is you actually do. And then I have other questions down the road as we dive into
Sure.
this deeper. But let's start with your experiences. What led you to reject Islam? What about Islam did you find out or discover that it was not an actual religion, but actually just more of a political movement or basically a way to gather people to gain control of the areas, what it really seems like it is.
Well, thank you, George, for having me. I'm excited about this. Well, basically, I'm asked this question all the time about how I left Islam, why I left Islam. And I can give you 1,000 different answers because it depends on how you approach the question. Do you want to approach it theologically, talking about the relationship with God, what is salvation, how Islam doesn't offer any spiritual transformation or relationship or reconciliation with God, or we can do it from a social perspective, how Islam, I would say, create a slavery mentality. You're not free. Your relationship with God is based on fear, obedience for the sake of obedience, and how that ends up creating dictatorships. That's why in the Islamic world, you cannot have secularism or free societies because the imagination of the people cannot comprehend freedom. It's always about dictatorship, the authority, the concept of authority itself in Islam is distorted. So my experience with Islam is really simple. When I was 18 years old, I made the decision that I wanted to commit myself to serve Allah and serve Islam and defend the Prophet Muhammad after the Danish cartoonist controversy in 2006. And I was moved or I was captured emotionally by what happened on the streets of the Arab world as a response to the drawings of the Prophet of Islam. But after a year of practicing Islam with full devotion, I realized that I was heading toward dead end road. There was nothing that Islam could offer me spiritually at all. Then, of course, I realized by reading the Islamic history that I was looking at a warlord and a theology of enslavement. It was an expansionist political ideology. That's it. And I converted to Christianity after reading the New Testament, had to leave my country because I couldn't practice my new faith in a country where 99% of the population are followers of one religion, one sect of the religion, actually, and in a culture that demands conformity. And that's it.
What? So let's rewind a bit and dive a little bit into what you said here. I want to understand. So what what about Islam is based on authoritarianism or in creating dictators? Where is it that that is found in Islam itself?
Listen, I'm working on my book. I'm going to talk about my book, but
Of course,
today I
we'll
was
get there.
writing about, today I was writing about how the Catholic Church didn't need a sacred text in order to justify violence during the Inquisitions. It only needed a sacred institution. That sacred institution found a high demand for salvation. We human beings, we need to be saved, whether we are believers or non-believers. Suffering in this world urged us to find a way to get saved, whether temporal relief in this world or eternal relief. So what happened during that time that justified violence, even though the biblical text doesn't justify violence at all? The church, as an authority, attached salvation to defending God and justified violence to protect the church. So even the Catholic Church without a text was able to do it. Imagine Islam with hundreds of texts in the sacred Quran and in the sacred Hadith. What Islam is capable of. Now, many of the Islamic apologists try to argue that, the interpretations are not true, have different interpretations. They try to refer to mysticism or metaphorical language. I don't care about all of that. At this point, it's really irrespective of what they think. The damage has already happened. And that damage, to explain it to our audience, is the 14 centuries of violence using the sacred text and the role model of Muhammad. That is irreversible. So you ask me what in Islam constitute this. I would say simply this: it's a combination of searching for salvation, the characteristics of God as a brutal dictator himself, threatening you with hellfire, grave torture if you don't obey him, and framing non-Muslims into enemies of Allah, and the role model of Muhammad leading or authorizing 86 battles, ordering assassinations against dissenters and poets who criticize him. Even for criticizing Muhammad, you get your head chopped off. And the Islamic history itself, establishing the rule of Allah. So, of course, I can go now and give you a list of verses. Surah 9, verse 5, Surah 9, verse 28, Surah 9, verse 42. I can give you like a list of hadith sayings of Muhammad. Doesn't matter. It's not how. It's like you can. Friedrich Nietzsche said that there is no meaning. It's only interpretation. And I can give you a verse, and that verse has its own horizon, and you also have your horizon. And there is a fusion of horizons when you read it. What is the horizon of the Islamic world? It is a horizon shaped by centuries of practical theology, of conquest, subjugation of non-Muslims, viewing non-Muslims as second-class citizens. They don't have value. The value is determined by your religious affiliation and your obedience. It's not a universal value like we have in the Western civilization. So when you have a God like that, and that vision of God form your imagination, you end up manifesting that image into the word. You cannot function with a secular regime because you don't comprehend that kind of governance. You get cognitive dissonance because you believe that authority is tyrannical, it's brutal, and then you end up with a system that has individual rights, has blind justice. It doesn't work like that. It's like there's discrimination all the way, everywhere in the character of God Himself. So I hope this explains to you why the whole argument about you don't get this meaning, the interpretation, it doesn't matter. All of it, it's like, it doesn't really matter. We're talking about deeper truth here.
Yeah, that's always the rebuttal. That's always you don't get the meaning because you're not reading it in the actual language or from the Arabic perspective. You're looking at it through a Western lens, so you don't understand, right?
Oh, yeah,
That
absolutely.
yeah, that's always the rebuttal.
Yeah.
But you can see the repeated behavior throughout the centuries, over and over and over. Um, and then there are those who say that even if you can read the language and you can interpret it from there, and that's the other thing I've noticed, and I don't know if I'm wrong on this, but it seems that with Islam, there is no room for interpretation. It's a literal reading of what the word is, and that's what it's supposed to be. Is that a correct assessment?
I'll go beyond that. I will say this: there is no interpretation at all in Islam. There is only one interpretation superior to everything else, and that is Muhammad himself. It's like you can have 1,000 different books about interpretation of the Quran and the meanings and the events, and it doesn't matter. It's like you have Muhammad as the ceiling. He's the ultimate authority on that sacred scripture. You want to understand God, look at Muhammad. He is the incarnation of God in the imagination of Muslims. Even though Islam claims not to be polytheistic religion, but it is actually in practicality, in its practical side, it is a polytheistic religion because Muhammad is almost equal to God. Without Muhammad, you cannot be saved. Without Muhammad, you don't have you are not accepted by Allah. So Muhammad is perceived by Muslims as central figure to not only the tangible side of the religion, but the spiritual side even. So why I said that, it doesn't matter what interpretation you look at, because at the end of the day, we have the story of Muhammad shaping what you believe about God and about others.
Right.
So
So
he is the interpretation.
yeah, so they're literally within the scriptures putting Muhammad, it seems to be above God himself, is what it sounds like. And they don't really acknowledge Jesus, or do they? Is there anything in there? Because the scripts of Islam did come after. It wasn't before.
Yeah.
There's even evidence of mosques built on top of older temples that way predate Islam. Absolutely predate Islam. So I got to ask you this though, because is there a different version? Okay, so Muslims, correct me if I'm wrong, are they not defined as people who practice Islam or worship the God according to the Quran or basically Muhammad? Is that true? Is that the definition of what a Muslim is?
Yeah, a Muslim who believes that Muhammad
Okay.
is the messenger of the creator of the universe.
Okay,
Yeah.
so with that being said, what's the difference between someone who practices Islam, who's not supposed to deviate or have any interpretation, and that person who is considered an extreme Islamist? Is there a difference? Do people progress? Because we always hear stories how in some Middle Eastern countries or even cities, whatever, that they're kind of getting away from Islam a bit or being a little more progressive in their views. So I don't know if this is true or not, but is there really a difference? Is there an extreme Islamist versus someone who practices Islam, or is it all the same?
No, there is no difference at all between Muslim and an Islamist. That is
None.
a made up term. Islamism is a made up term. It was embraced by the Western government after 9/11 in order to be able to contain or combat the Islamic terrorist groups without having to go against 1.5 billion Muslims. So they said, okay, we're going to differentiate between the so-called radical groups and the rest of the Muslims.
So then the average Muslim believes exactly what we hear about people who are considered extreme Islamists.
Every
The
single
the
Muslim
West
in the
is,
world,
yeah, everything
and this
that's
is
not
not
the East or according to Muhammad's teaching has to go, has to be converted, or death to all infidels. Is that correct?
every single Muslim in the world has to
All of them.
believe what ISIS believes in order to be a truthful, authentic Muslim.
So then how is it that we can accept that any Muslim could be integrated into any culture then?
They have to get rid of Islam. They have to push Islam to the back, and that's the problem, because the path of salvation in Islam is obedience to Allah. You have to adhere to all the commandments of Allah, or there is a very shortcut: jihad, martyrdom. You die in the path of Allah. So here's the thing: the extreme majority of Muslims, they don't practice true Islam because Islam is impractical. It's inconvenient. They cannot reconcile it with their reality. So they ignore it. They simply live as if it doesn't exist. But at the same time, they cannot condemn it because they know that this is the real Islam. So they always justify it. Hamas, performing jihad, they have to find a justification. Oh, it's resistance. Oh, it's, they are oppressed. ISIS, they would be like, ISIS was created by the United States of America, by the Western imperialists.
Yeah, that's all bullshit, by the way.
So anyway, it doesn't matter. It's like they will find a way not to condemn it, because they know they cannot condemn. If they condemn ISIS, they condemn Muhammad. I challenge 1.8 billion Muslims living in the world today to give me one single act that ISIS did that Muhammad didn't. One.
So reality is not all Muslims are really true Muslims then. I mean, there's a lot of people that
No,
ignore.
they have to come up with a new name for their religion. That religion that has, unfortunately, even though we're saying they're not true Muslims, but their epistemological reality is Islamic. That what informs their knowledge of the word is Islamic,
Right.
even though if they don't practice it. So that's another dangerous thing. And that's what I'm trying to challenge. I'm trying to educate the West about Islam, but at the same time, I want to challenge Muslims to rethink Islam itself. It's like you cannot really wait until Islam takes over the world so that you can practice Islam, because other than that, there's no way to practice it. You will go to jail.
So anybody who is considered Muslim, because Muslim obviously always like, at least in the West, we use the word to refer to a people, correct? And so it seems like there's no way to separate those who are just not religious people, right? They're a bit more secular in their views, but they're still classified as a Muslim or someone who would practice Islam. So it seems like there's no way for them to escape it. Is that a true assessment?
That's true, but we need to be careful, because not all Muslims who identify with Islam wake up in the morning plotting against the rest of the world. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of my point. I guess I'm trying to make is, how do we count for those individuals versus the literal?
Yeah. First of all, we need to understand that the majority of Muslims who migrate to the West, they are coming for a better future, for better opportunities, for the freedom. But they would always ally themselves with Islam whenever the opportunity allows. However, they don't. They're not a threat by themselves, except if they are radicalized or if they are pulled into more authentic radical version of Islam through different Islamic movements in the West. Now, again, you're asking me a very difficult questions. I don't know how to answer it because I don't want to. I want to be fair to the majority of Muslims out there, but at the same time, I can't really think of a way, because the line between identifying with Islam and not practicing it and becoming a true Muslim is very thin. It's one prayer away, one epiphany away, one decision to be committed. So that's the danger. But I don't want to spread fear. I don't want people to start because this is wrong. I'm not saying be fearful of Muslims, all Muslims. That's not true. No, the majority of Muslims, again, they are not practicing Islam, true Islam. But unfortunately,
I understand where you're coming from, but that's not what my intention is either. I'm trying to understand, because this is the way I look at it. It's like everybody says the Western world is Christian, but not everybody is religious or practices Christianity. Everyone's a Catholic, but they only practice Catholicism on Sunday, and the rest of the week they're just a bunch of jerks. So that's what I'm trying to get at. Like, I think people are throwing a blanket over people that are considered Muslim, but in reality, in today's world, I mean, we hear the news, we hear the leaks that come out that not everybody who lives in those regions actually believes in that particular religion, but they have no way out. They're stuck in the culture that they were born into.
Yeah, it's different than being Christians or a Jew or any of that.
That's what I'm trying to say. I'm not trying to.
In Islam.
Yeah, I'm not trying to spread
let me help
fear.
you understand what's going on here.
Sure.
I was watching a TV show, and a Jewish person met his dad, and he told him, "Hey, Dad, I became a Jew for Christ." And his dad said like things like that. He's like, he didn't care for that. He didn't kill him. He didn't. There was like, it passed a few seconds. That's it. Okay, you're a Jew for Christ. Who cares? You're converted to Christianity. It doesn't matter. Now, if you're a Christian and you tell your parents, I'm converting to Scientology, maybe they're going to have a conversation with you. I don't know. But they're not going to threaten to kill you. In Islam, it's different. Identifying with Islam means that Allah is your God. Muhammad is your prophet. The Quran is your book. You see the world from an Islamic lens, but it's not necessary that you practice everything in Islam, because you can't. Simply, you can't practice it. There are too many elements in Islam that are dormant, that you cannot practice anymore. Now, can you leave Islam and like be fine? Nobody's going to touch you. It's unlikely, because again, Islam doesn't give you that room. You are either in or out. If you're out, then you are the enemy of Allah. It's not an intellectual struggle. It's not a wrestling with ideas. No, it's affiliation to the tribe, to the nation, to the ummah. So that's why, as long as you are inside the borders of the ummah, the nation, the danger is real. You can't. The majority of Muslims go to mosque only on Friday, just like Christians go on Sunday. But the difference is Christianity, it gives you a framework to deal with the word. Islam doesn't give you only a framework. Islam interferes with every single detail. So that is the difference between Islam and Christianity, is that Christianity is a private faith. It is something that informs how you see the world, of course, but it's most about spirituality, about salvation, about metaphysical reality. However, Islam interjects itself into every single detail of your life, and it comes attached with violence. Your identity itself is connected to Islam. If I ask you, George, what are you? You might say, I'm American, I'm a man, I'm a father, I'm a Christian, right? It's like Christian comes number 4. But if you ask a Muslim, what are you? I'm a Muslim. That's number 1. That's what defines your identity. So that's why being non-practicing Muslim doesn't equate non-practicing Christian. It's not like that. Non-practicing Muslim is still a Muslim. So I hope that makes sense.
No, I understand what you're saying, but it also leads to this, like, how are we not supposed to fear the conquest that is inherent in the practice of Islam then? How are we not supposed to fear those? Because here's the deal. If you're born into a culture to where you're encapsulated and captured and you have no way out, and when you want to get out, you're in fear of dying, right? And so even if you come to the West, people still will label you as a Muslim, so you still can't get out, it seems. So
In the West, it's easier. People in the
you
West wants to leave Islam, they leave. They take advantage of the freedom here. But
okay?
unfortunately, Muslims in the West, they become more radical, more devout to Islam, because now they are living behind the enemy lines, the enemies of Allah, of course. And obedience to Islam becomes allegiance.
Right, right. But now we're talking
So,
about someone who takes it from the extreme view, right? Tries to live the
no.
life.
It's not extreme view. This is like the view of all.
It's
If
just
there are
the view.
Muslims,
There's no such thing as extreme.
no. This is like the view. If you are living in a non-Islamic land,
Yeah.
then you are living behind the enemy lines.
Yes.
It's like I can look into the eyes of every single Muslim in the world who confess Islam as his religion and tell him this: a non-Islamic land is an enemy land.
Right.
You cannot say otherwise, because it's engraved in your imagination, in your understanding of the word, that there is an Islamic land and non-Islamic land. That's
I
it.
get it. I do understand
Yeah.
that. But the question still, how are we supposed to be accepting of these people looking for a better life if in the end they all want death to the West, apparently? They all want to change the West. They all want to live under the banner of whence or from hence they came, right? They want to continue that lifestyle no matter where they go. So what's the point of migrating for a better life if you're just going to go backwards once you capture that land? You're just going to revert back from whence you came.
Yeah, that's where law and order comes into place. All people don't want to stop on the red light. They want to keep driving, but they stop because there are consequences. It doesn't matter if a group of people wants to take over the world, as long as they don't have the means to do it. You have people who are Nazis in America. You have people who are still dreaming of the Confederacy and slavery. So
Yeah.
they're not able to do it. Why? Because their ideology has been exposed, and they don't have the means to enforce them. The same thing should be done to Muslims. Muslims are not going anywhere. You cannot get rid of them. They are people. They have rights. They are free to worship whatever they want, to believe whatever they want. But you need to make sure that this ideology is not rebranded as peaceful ideology, because you will let it slip through the cracks and reshape your society. You need a diagnosis. You need to say, oh, hold on a second, this is a dangerous ideology. If you don't say that, you are risking the future of the Western civilization. because you want to be tolerant.
Yeah, I know. I understand.
You just say the truth. Islam is a political ideology that has a religious aspect to it, and Islam wants to take over the world. And Muslims, because they identify with Islam, they don't have a choice whether they go with this vision or they leave Islam. And it's not easy to leave your religion. So, my dear Muslims, since your religion wants to take over the world, we're going to make sure that it doesn't.
Right, but let me say something here, and I am not against anything you're saying, by the way. I'm just trying to understand because it seems like it gets very fuzzy when we're trying to define, how do we respect the person who wants to not live under the rule of Islam? You know what I mean? And those that know that they can't because they're stuck in it. Now, what you said earlier was, well, yes, there are people, they have a right to do whatever they want, worship, etc. But it's not true of a Nazi. Once we know someone's a Nazi, it's over. We don't allow them to practice it. If we know that they've committed crimes, they're done. So how come we can't apply that same principle to the people who practice Islam? Why are we not allowed to?
Nazis, they believe in that ideology and they live among others.
No, understood. But
you say they don't practice it. Of course, they don't practice it. The same thing. Right. What I'm saying is, Muslims cannot practice Islam in the West. What I mean by that, the Islam that entails taking over the world, which they call political Islam in the West, which I call Islam, should be categorized or recognized as a political ambition, political ideology, and banned. You cannot you cannot preach about it in mosques. You cannot use the religion freedom, the Second Amendment, the First Amendment, freedom of speech, right, and freedom of religion to preach about jihad. It's like you need to really dig deeper. You cannot take Islam as a monolithic entity. It's a religion. It's not a religion. We can divide the private faith aspect of Islam, allow it in the West, but everything else should be banned, should be recognized as a political ideology that you can believe in, but you cannot practice.
Yeah.
As simple as that. It all comes down to this. I know that people sometimes, when I say this, they think, oh, Danny, you're radical. It's not going to happen. My dear friends, there's no other way. Whether you strip the religious label from Islam, or Islam is going to take over your civilization. Period. There's no other way. If a Muslim wants to practice prayer, fasting, all the rituals that is private and personal and spiritual, fine, that's religion. But everything else that's trying to convert people through deception, that is another political strategy in Islam. It's like why Muslims are allowed to have booths everywhere in in Western cities, but Christians get killed in Islamic countries for preaching the gospel. Why? It's like you need to address this because you just.
So let me coin it this way. Let me go back to what I was trying to say. Okay, the world over can absolutely justify that Nazi bad, but they will not say Islam bad. I guess that's what I was saying. I'm going to simplify what I was saying.
Yeah,
but that's what I was trying to say. Was that everyone can recognize someone who considers themselves a Nazi as bad right away. We don't want that person. But when it comes to Islam, everyone's afraid to identify it for what it really is. And you know this, you're gonna a lot more than me. But if you look at the history, I mean, literally, Muhammad, not too long after he started gaining control, he wanted to expand his empire. It had nothing to do with converting to a certain religion. He wanted to expand the empire, just like the Romans did. and he wanted to do more. He wanted to go out. There was nine Muslim conquests, right? And then we can talk about the Inquisitions and whatnot, but those were in response to the Muslim conquests. Absolutely were.
We have an evidence, historical evidence. The Patriarch of Jerusalem sent a letter to the Patriarch of Antakya during the siege of Jerusalem. The Muslim troops were about to enter Jerusalem, and in his letter he said the Arab gangs are asking us to pay the jizya, or they will enter the city. The Patriarch did not mention they are asking us to convert to Islam. So this is an evidence that it was a conquest of a political expansion. It was, but of course, it used religion in order to expand. But going back to your point, it's like, yes, a Nazi is a bad person, but we cannot say all Muslims are bad. No, not all Nazis are bad, because if you're born into a Nazi family, it's not necessary that you believe or you want to practice it. So we say Nazism is bad, not the people, because we don't know. Every person has their own version, their own journey, their own understanding. We don't attack people. We attack the ideology itself. I don't care, because you could be a Muslim, but your worldview was shaped by different circumstances. Different. You get the point. It's like I
understand, but
I can't at all say that Muslims are bad, or Muslims wants to take over the world, or I would say that. You would never hear me accuse Muslims themselves.
Right.
But that the ideology. Just a second, please.
Yeah.
I just said that the ideology itself condition its followers to be afraid, to be terrified of not obeying Allah, if asked to. Otherwise, they will be considered apostate. So the ideology is dangerous, and Muslims are the victims of this ideology. So what do you want me to do? I can vet immigrants, ideological vetting. I can do a lot of things on the security level. But when it comes to real life, we have 2 billion Muslims. I cannot say that all of them are a threat, or because it's not practical. I will be like, it's. I don't know what to say. You can't do that. It's just simply wrong. But we can say Islam itself, the ideology is bad. And if we don't admit that, then we are risking our future, the future of our children. And we cannot let Muslims, by the way, enforce Islamophobia on the rest of the world, and protecting Islam from scrutiny. There's no such a thing as Islamophobia. It's a manufactured term to protect the religion. Hatred toward a group of people is different than criticizing their religion. You can criticize Christianity, Judaism. You can say whatever you want about Moses or Jesus or Paul, or nobody's going to kill you. We want the same thing. We want to be able and to be free to criticize Muhammad, to criticize the Quran, to tell the truth, our truth, what we see to be truth about Islam. But Muslims, as individuals, as people, absolutely, any hatred toward them, just for the sake of hatred itself or inciting of violence, is wrong, must be condemned, and we must never tolerate that. My mother is still a Muslim, but the ideology itself, you cannot protect the ideology because you don't want to to seem racist. And Islam is not a race, so you cannot really be racist against Islam. connecting Islam to race, to brown immigrants, oppressed group of people, is a radical left product that was designed to advance their ideology of the oppressed oppressor view. So yeah, I think there's a thin line between a Muslim and Islam, but we should not cross that line. However, we shouldn't let Muslims prevent us from criticizing Islam. That fusion of Islam and Muslims must be obliterated. We cannot tolerate it. Otherwise, Islam will infiltrate through Muslims without you realizing it. You need to separate the ideology from the people and protect yourself from it.
Yeah. So that's basically what I'm trying to get at. What I'm trying to ask is like, I don't think anybody's going to agree with attacking a person just for existing. Okay. But on the other hand, many people are defined by what they identify with or practice, like a job. The problem with Islam is you can't leave Islam like you leave a job. You don't punch in 8 to 5 or 9 to 5 and then go home and all of a sudden you're a different person. No, you're defined as that person 24/7. That's the problem. So, how do we separate a bad ideology from a person who's just trying to live?
Again, you just have laws in the land to protect you from whatever that ideology entails.
Similar what's going on in Italy and whatnot, and these other European nations lately, where there's like, okay, you can't wear the headdress, you can't do certain things anymore that are part of your religion. I mean, is that a way forward in suppressing some of that?
Um, I wouldn't prioritize the hijab or the niqab or the halal food. I don't care about that.
No, I was just using an example.
I
Yeah,
will tell you what I care about. What I care about is after realizing that Islam is a political ideology, then I should see all the Islamic entities as a potential threat. So I have to monitor fundings to all Islamic charities, all Islamic nonprofits. I have to assume that true Islam, which entails the political ideology, is being preached at mosques, at schools. So the government, in order to act within the framework of the law, needs to first find a way to do this. It's like because of the freedom of religion, you cannot control the speech at mosques, right? You cannot monitor all fundings to nonprofits, Islamic nonprofits, because you will be accused of Islamophobia and hatred and bigotry. But the law must be enforced. Like there must be a way to give the government the power to do that. Just imagine, for the sake of the argument, that Pablo Escobar turned his coke empire into a religion. I wrote about this once. And according to the United States laws, they are free to worship the god of powder. And they are able to recruit believers and to practice the religion of using the drug. Is the United States government going to let that happen? No. Because even if Pablo Escobar ended up with a recognized religion, they will tell him, listen, you can worship the god of powder, but that powder is illegal. So we are not going to let it, we're not going to confuse it with the religious part of your movement. We're going to seize it. We're going to punish people for using it or trading. So the same thing with Islam. I'm sorry, I'm using radical examples, but that's the reality we're dealing with. Jihad is as
Yeah, but
dangerous.
I don't think these are radical examples because, you keep bringing up, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, but even within that framework, there is a way to suppress the spread of hate speech, right? And we can consider most of what is being practiced in the Quran as hate speech because anybody who is not considered a Muslim is considered what are they called? An infidel? Is that correct? Or what are they
Yeah,
called?
and
Okay. And they must what? Convert or die. That's the message.
or pay
So
the jizya. Yeah.
so then then is that not a way forward in doing so? So what I'm seeing is the way it is being spread into the West is because exactly like you said, nobody wants to be called a racist, an Islamophobe. We all want to be accepting. But in my opinion, look, if cultures don't mix, that's just what it is. We don't always have to meld together. We don't. I mean, how many Westerners are moving to the Middle East to set up shop and start a new life? You don't see
Many
it.
are moving. Many are moving to Dubai, to
They're
United Arab Emirates.
right,
But
right.
why?
But it's not the
Not
same.
an
It's not
Islamic country. It's not an
no,
Islamic
it's
country. No.
it's not the
Eh,
same as what we're seeing on the other side of it.
oh, yeah, absolutely. But I have to say this: the United Arab Emirates is being used by all Muslims around the world to argue that you see Islam is capable of building a civilization, but that's not true because all everything Dubai represents is imported. The laws, the values, the economy, everything.
Everything about Dubai is all about money. Everything they're doing
It's
is about
important.
economics.
That's the most important thing.
That's all it
It's
is.
imported system.
Yeah,
Everything about it. So
it's
you cannot claim it is Islamic by
no.
any way, shape, or form.
It's the same reason China turned to capitalism.
Yeah, of
Their
course.
system was failing.
Yeah.
That's exactly what Dubai is. All it is that whole thing was just an economic movement. So again,
So is the point clear? You need to differentiate between uh, a private faith that um, doesn't have a social catastrophic consequences and hate speech, or not only hate speech, but a political strategy, war strategy that's targeting the West. You cannot consider it to be part of that private faith. You need to differentiate between the two. But the problem is when they try to differentiate, they ended up with Islamism and Islam. They said Islamism doesn't is not connected to the sacred text of Islam. It's a political movement emerged in the mid 20th century in the Middle East. That is disastrous because no, we need to differentiate between two outcomes of the same text: a political outcome of the same exact text of Islam, and a spiritual ritual practices also the outcome of the same text. The political side is not separate, is not, uh, 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 it was not the result of Western imperialism. It was not the product of political movement that hijacked the label Muslim or Islam. No, not true. It is the product of Islam itself, its sacred text, the life and actions and sayings of Muhammad, and the historical reality of Islam.
well, everything you're saying is a lot that I have been saying. Um, what you just said, by the way, and
Great minds think alike.
I get criticized, but the reality is I did a dive into the history. Like where does this extreme terrorism come from? Everybody always blames the US for it. And it predates. It goes all the way back to the mid to late 1600s CE. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing this right. The Harajites, right? Or the Harajit. And they were the people that were known to practice this extreme terrorism against their own people, other Muslims. They didn't care about the West back then. And they did this all the way through about, I think,
You're
12.
talking about the Khawarij?
Yeah, well, like I said, I can't pronounce it.
Not only the Khawarij. The Khawarij is used by Muslims to exonerate Islam. They say,
Right, right, right.
Art invented terrorism. No, Muhammad invented terrorism.
No, understood. But
Yeah,
what I was researching was that the first acknowledgement of terrorism on record in history
yeah. They
was
see
that.
them as a
Yeah,
very
and I know it goes before that, but it's crazy that to think that everybody believes America created this terrorist like
this
mindset,
is
and
this
it
is
goes back over, like you said, almost 1,400 years.
in the 60s. The left, the radical left, they wanted to blame America for everything, especially with the war in Vietnam and the emergence of new ideological or new school of thought that um, is connected to postmodernism, relativism, and post-colonialism. It's like America is an imperialist power system. Um, America got here to this greatness as a result of colonialism and imperialism and abuse of power. And when the when communism died by the fall of the wall of Berlin, they needed something else, a structure to lean against with their ideology. So they found Islam. So Islam actually is the alternative that the communist, Leninist found um, in order not to give up their ideology. It's as simple as that, because Islam has the same characteristics of some of the characteristics of of communism. So they found an alternative, a safe alternative, and through Islam they can keep attacking the West. They can keep attacking America, capitalism. So they had to say, in order to justify Islamic terrorism or exonerate Islam from terrorism, to say it is a Western um, um, invention.
Yeah,
It's America is responsible for creating Al Qaeda. America is responsible for ISIS, and this is a two-folded win, if I'm saying it correctly. They get to blame the West, which serves their agenda, and at the same time, it empowered their alliance with Islam. So yeah, it goes. You can read. There's a book by David Howitz, the founder of Howitz Freedom Center. It's called The Unholy Alliance. You can read about all of this in that book.
yeah, I've heard about that book. I haven't read it, but I have heard it about it. And a lot of people don't realize that even Afghanistan at one point was a communist nation. They were, and even Iran was on.
That's true.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and Iran too at a time was communist. We're going down that road. So I guess a lot of people attribute terrorism to the U.S. because of our involvement, but the intent was to stop the spread of communism, not create terrorist organizations. Um, so which is what we did not do. I mean, terrorist organizations were already there. They just got the backing and funding to expand and continue what they wanted to do on a much larger scale. And as you said, the West then became the
There,
enemy. It was now the focus. It gave them a mission, right? A focus. So,
and I have a message to the isolationist who wants to America not to interfere with anything. It's like,
yeah, what's your thoughts on that? I was wondering how you
you
feel about
can't
that.
you can't be you can't claim the word leadership and isolate yourself. It's ridiculous. It's like,
True.
if you want to isolate yourself, just give up leadership.
Yeah.
But with that, give up prosperity and the best economy in the world, and it's ridiculous. It's like you cannot reap the benefits of being the most powerful nation in the history of humanity, and at the same time you want to isolate yourself. We need to focus on America. Tucker Carlson. We need to focus on our streets are smell like pests. It doesn't matter. It's like you have to look at both,
Yeah, but
internally and externally, because you're the world leader.
right, the US is still seen as the leader, but then you have other leaders that don't want the US to be the leader. They don't want them to be in the lead or intervene. So it's like,
But there's a price for not being a leader.
right, but on one
If you
side,
want
what
to
you're
give it up,
saying,
you're gonna pay.
on one side, I agree with what you're saying. I understand what you're saying, but on the other, the world is trying to get away from the U.S. being the major power in the world right now, or at least the lead as far as the power dynamic is concerned. Which so I don't believe the
Think it's
U.S.
gonna
should
happen.
stop invading.
I don't think it's gonna happen. I don't think
Well,
that at least not in the next century. I'll tell you why. Um, Being the world leader is not about economy. It's not about China and its factories and the labor numbers. It's about the architecture of your morality. It's about your values. It's about freedom. America is great because it has these values at the root of its identity. America became rich because it has these values. America became rich because it's great. It doesn't become great because it's rich. So people get it backward. It's like, we are rich, so we are leading the world. No, you're leading the world because you're great. You became rich out of that greatness. Are these values at risk? Yes. Are they abolished? No. We are still enjoying the freedom that no other nation on earth has. Just look at the UK, for example. It's a dictatorship. It's like if you tweet, if you post something on Facebook, you go to jail. It's like in China, oh my goodness, you cannot even compare that. It's like, listen, there are elements for greatness. In China, it doesn't have any of these elements. Freedom is at the center of being a great leader. And America is still the land of the free. So my message to the isolationists is like, don't even think about it. The moment you think you can isolate yourself, you are giving up your morality or moral responsibility. And if you give up your moral responsibility, you're giving up your values, which made you great.
right, but everything you said is true, right? I agree with everything you said, but the sentiment of isolationism by some people, if you're talking about people in the United States, by the way, is not so much not wanting to be a free world or even offer freedom to people. The sentiment comes from those here that don't want to keep spending our tax dollars funding wars. And that's what people are concerned with. A lot of people are wondering, like, why do we always have to get involved? Why can't you handle your own bullshit, basically? Why can't you handle your own fight? That, and I'm not saying I agree with that. I'm just explaining to you what
You're the big brother.
yeah, where
You
that's
have,
coming from.
yeah, but you're as the big brother, you have to be there, present, ready to be responsible, to lead, to provide wisdom and guidance, and sometimes through strength. I will give you an example. The catastrophe that we're witnessing today in Syria, I believe it is the natural outcome of the Americans' desire to end wars. Look what we have today. America thought, okay, if we take al-Assad down, and this way we weaken Iran, and we get rid of Hezbollah supply line, and at the same time we deliver Syria to this jihadist group, we can contain it, we can control it. This way we don't have to, prolong the war, and we will contain it. It's manageable. So this way, we are not spending money in the Middle East. Now, look what's happening. Um, there is no such thing as shortcut to peace. The jihadist regime in Syria, even as they are trying to gain international recognition they couldn't behave themselves. It's like they couldn't for few months until the world accept them.
Yeah, but
they massacred the Alawites, and today they're
yes,
massacring the Druze. Now, if America didn't make this decision and they kept al-Assad, because there's no other way to rule Muslims, unfortunately, in the Islamic world, except through the religious government or the dictatorship. There's no other way. If you kept al-Assad, you had to fight Iran. Well, maybe you will have a longer war, but you will make sure that jihadists are not ruling one of the most strategic, important nations in the Middle East. So there's a price for trying to end wars.
Yeah, but
Same thing
so
by the way.
so the argument is we need perpetual war to keep it from getting out of hand, like before, to keep it from becoming a bigger war. And at the same time, it's as if it's being said that, you know, we can't afford for the US to not exist and get involved in everybody's um everybody's squabbles,
If the United States is going to keep doing that, the same thing over and over again,
right?
that is stupidity. They cannot expect different results, right? So what is the solution then? Look at what happened in Afghanistan. America spent $2.4 trillion, lost thousands of soldiers, and the exit, the shameful exit, it's like the historical shameful exit of the United States from Afghanistan. No one is going to forget that ever. So what happened? What went wrong there? I'll tell you what went wrong. America went to Afghanistan thinking of the same scenario of Japan, Germany, South Korea. You know, nations want to be built. Nations seek prosperity and freedom, and they will stretch their hand to us, and they will let us help them rebuild. That misconception, that assumption that every single body in the world is similar and they think like us is disastrous. They did not understand that the ideology in Afghanistan and the ideology in Iraq doesn't care for prosperity and rebuilding and the future. It cares for something else, and that is destruction, death, expansionism. So they completely ignored the ideological reality, the theological reality of Afghanistan, and they ended up paying $2.4 trillion, losing thousands of soldiers, and leaving behind them a more destructed country, a more destroyed country than the one they entered. So instead of American organizations funded by the government going to Kabul University teaching about transsexualism, they should have done something else. They should have tried to dismantle the theological structure that shape the reality of these people in order to focus on the future, not on death and war and struggle. So if America wants to keep doing what America is doing now, or what has America been doing for the past 20, 30 years, then yeah, I support the don't interfere position. Why bother? But America has to do it in a different way. It's like instead of replacing the Wilaya project in the Middle East, the Wilaya is the Shia Iranian vision of governance. Instead of replacing it with the Sunni Caliphate, you keep fighting the Sunni Caliphate and the Shia Wilaya and end both of them. But keep alternating between both only gives you ceasefire. That's it. You will keep ping-ponging between fighting the Shia and then fighting the Sunnah. Every 20 years, you're sick and tired of the Sunni jihadism. Let's go to the Shia Wilaya project. You're sick of them. No, it doesn't work that way. You have to identify the roots of this conflict, why this keep happening. You need to use your leverage, your power and economy, and the strength of your economy to force Arab leaders and Islamic leaders to not to do reformation in education on their own. You need experts to reform the curriculums in the Arab world. You need to overhaul the religious speech in the Arab world. You need to weaken the ideological grip of Islam in order to achieve a long-lasting peace. But jumping between Shia and Sunnah, same terrorism, different names, different labels, is going to waste your resources, and you will never be able to achieve peace.
Okay, so there's a lot to unpack on what you said. So let's just get back to Afghanistan. First time we were ever there was why? Who was our enemy in the beginning? Russia, really, communism. That was the reason we even got involved. Now, there's a lot of conspiracy theorists that always say, well, no, there's other nefarious reasons America ever got involved in the Middle East. It was to basically rob, steal, and plunder all the resources. A lot of people argue that side of it. But realistically, we were there because we were trying to stop the spread of communism. 2001-ish, we went back for what? Okay, the war on terror. Right? Now, we can argue whether or not 9/11 was a hoax and it was done by our own government. A lot of people believe that. Let the conspiracy theorists chase that rabbit all they want. But the reality is the war on terror. Now, what you're saying is, hear me out. Now, we as a nation, let's say the reason we were there was to abolish terrorism, abolish the Taliban, abolish Al Qaeda, right? We want to get rid of them. We wanted to, let's say, give freedom to the people who, from our point of view, did not want to live under the rule of terror. Okay, so now we achieved abolishing that for as long as it did anyway, right? It wasn't forever, it rose again. But let's just stay on what I'm going to say here.
Yeah.
Okay, so now that that's gone, and there's the opportunity for the people to finally step up and accept that they may even have an opportunity to have freedom, they chose not to, or were they still afraid to do so because they were still in fear of the remnants of what might be left from these terrorist organizations? So what the problem we're having is, and everything you're saying and the solution that you're proposing, I understand what you're saying, but it's almost like America has to go over there, take all the land over, rule it, eradicate their way of thinking, and try to make them a different people. That's not going to happen. And when we're talking about colonizers earlier, the biggest colonizers were never the United States. It was the British. They're the ones who went in and took over the Middle East years ago and ran it. They ran out of money and resources, and that is why the U.S. was asked to step in and help the British. But that's what happened way back then. So what is this? What is the solution? Afghanistan was a huge, it was a big debacle, right? The way we pulled out was stupid. It never should have happened that way, ever. And I'm not disagreeing with you. But what I'm hearing from you and what I'm trying to understand is, how is it moral for us to go and take over a people and try to convert them to become something else other than what they want to be?
I'm not suggesting that at all. I'm just saying utilizing American power in order to make a difference. For example, Egypt, I believe their U.S. aid is, not sure if it's 1.7 billion or 3 billion, something like that. I'm not sure. Anyway, we can find out. If the United States asked Egypt, like, yeah, we want to give you $1.7 billion, we're giving them to you anyway, but can we talk about your curriculums in schools, what you're teaching your children? It's like, it's legitimate ask because you want to protect your international interest. and national security. So you need to make sure that Ayman al-Zawahiri, another Ayman al-Zawahiri, is not graduating from Egyptian schools. So does America do that? Absolutely not. They don't care about that at all. They only care about integrating diversity into the curriculums and talking about homosexuality. And who cares about that?
True, but those things did come later. So what about before all of that was the movement? We were still giving money and aid to many countries in the Middle East. And I guess, based on what you're saying is we weren't holding these countries accountable. It's like, sure, you want the money, you need the funding, but we don't believe in the way that you're running things. We don't believe in the basis of what your culture is built on. That's, I mean, that is, we're then on the danger of becoming an authoritarian government trying to take over the world. It's like imposing our view and culture on another.
Giving you money. Listen, I'm giving you money, a lot of money. By the way, it's not only the $1.7 billion that the Egyptian government gets. I don't have the number now. I'm going to research it. I'm making a note here. But I believe it's tens or hundreds of billions of dollars every year that goes to Egypt.
No, you're right.
Just a second. Through the nonprofit organizations, from the American money, from American organizations.
Yes.
Now, America can use that for the good of the people. It's not being tyrannical authoritarian. That's not true. I just want to make sure. Listen, my friend, I want to help you, but please let me just take a look. What's going on here? Okay, your second class. I'm sorry. Your the book of religion of the book of religion in the second year at school is teaching that the companion of Muhammad, Abu Ubaidah, beheaded his own father because he was an infidel.
Right.
Can we just remove that, for God's sake? You cannot keep this and keep getting $100 billion a year from me. So I'm not throwing some imaginary impossible asks or requests. I'm not asking the United States government to be authoritarian or colonialist. I'm just asking very simply, you need to recognize, okay, the Islamic countries and the Islamic governments, they have to appease the fundamentals in their nations. And of course, this is what happens. I'm not making this up. If you have a president or a king in the Arab world, in order to prevent the Muslims who are fundamentalists, who are very religious, from interfering with politics, they give them authority over everything in the country except politics. So they ask them, don't interfere with politics, but go and do whatever you want with the education. They deliver the education department to them and to their ideologues. Now, can the United States of America make a difference using its power, utilizing its resources? Absolutely. The fact that the U.S. is not doing it is because the U.S. administration, one after the other, is surrounding themselves with idiots, with eggheads in academia who don't understand Islam at all, or who believe that Islam is a peaceful religion, but there are different interpretations, or leftists who believe Islamic terrorism is the result of imperialism, or Muslims who would never admit that Islam is a problem. So I wrote an article about this. I said that the counselors of collapse. I called them the counselors of collapse. They are the counselors who are not giving a true counsel to the lawmaker. And the result is wasted resources, trillions and trillions of dollars, American lives, and we haven't moved even a step. We're still at the same square.
So as far as money goes, I don't know the exact number in Egypt either, but I've done a lot of research on that in previous episodes. I can just tell you that if you combine territories and countries, every year the U.S. funds over 240 territories and countries combined. Period. The number I do know is, for example, like with Israel, 3.2 billion every year, regardless. Now, the argument has always been with some of these funds that a lot of that's supposed to come back to purchase military aid or supplies, et cetera, maybe even food. But it's not just that minimum amount that we send every country. There's always more to that, like you said. So I get what you're saying. It's like you want this support, but for us to support you, we
Conditional.
don't support this view. So you got to make an adjustment if you want to continue to get that money, right? So I understand it, and it's not a bad idea. I get your idea, but we're also on it's a slippery slope to where we can be on a downward spiral of becoming that nation of, beyond a superpower, literally just always dangling the carrot over another country's head and saying, if you're not us,
You have to
we
do
can't
it.
help you.
Sometimes you have to do it. Sometimes you have to realize that.
So should every country be like the United States
What do you mean?
in terms of how the United States lives? It's well, not even that. In terms of their freedom, our democracy, etc. Is that what you believe?
Okay, let me ask you this. Do you believe that freedom is making your life better?
Of course it is. I mean, that's
Okay.
not even a question. The question is,
Is it a universal need?
I believe it is.
Okay, so you are not imposing your way of life on others. You are delivering a gift. It's more important than food. Freedom is as necessary as the air we breathe. So if the United States is fighting to make people live freely, it is a moral obligation, as moral as helping people during a famine. So this is not imposition of a lifestyle. That is a lie. And people who repeat such things are liars. They want to enjoy the freedom that the US is offering them, the freedom which is the result of centuries of struggle, philosophical, ideological. They enjoy it, but of course they want to keep it to themselves. They don't want to give it to other people because it would be imposition. That is ridiculous. It's like if you see evil, you change that evil. And there is a universal definition of evil, and that is slavery of people. It's like when you enslave people, that is evil. Everybody agrees to that. It's not a relative thing. People are not going to disagree on the definition of freedom. It's like, am I respecting your personal agency? Do you have the power to make your own decisions and determine your future? If you're not, if you are being imprisoned for saying your opinion, if you are oppressed for writing a book or changing your religion or having certain views, then you're not free. And that for me is as bad as being starving to death. So I completely disagree with this framing.
You could disagree, absolutely, but
Yeah, not with you, with the premise.
We're look. This whole conversation has just turned into a very philosophical conversation in general. I mean, we're not coming up with defined solutions because we can't impose these solutions right now. I mean, we want to, but we can't. Freedom is a gift, agreed. But then it also goes back to the statement of how Muslims live, in which it's built on the foundation of a religion where freedom is not inherently part of their culture. So if we want to be philosophical, sure, let's inject freedom into your culture, which means what? Abolishing your culture and way of life. You are no longer who you are. That's what I'm getting at. Now, it doesn't mean that I don't agree with you. Everybody should live free. Everyone should live free. And everybody has a different culture. Like we don't all see things and do things the same way, because it all comes down to geography. What you deal with defines who you are, really, what's around you. And I understand that. But when we're talking about example, again, going back to Islam, as you had stated, and as it is written, it is not a basis of freedom. It's not built on freedom. It's based on subjugation. It's based on control. And if we wanted to change that, okay, and if you have a culture, for example, that is defined by that religion, and that is the basis for the culture itself, then you'd have to abolish the culture to move forward and be free.
Uh,
Not the people. I'm saying I'm not saying abolish the people.
Listen, again, to the moral obligation thing.
Mhm.
Somebody is starving to death, and you have the power to feed them.
Then
You
feed 'em,
don't care. You don't really care about cultural relativism. You don't care about if somebody is trying to commit suicide. You jump and you help them.
I agree. Yeah.
So when suicide and starvation to death becomes cultural difference, that is dangerous. It's not a cultural difference. If somebody is attributing their suicidal way of life to religion, you don't let them do that. I can imagine the U.S. government interfering and forcing the Jamestown people, and it's like arresting all of them before they kill themselves. It's like, wasn't that a religion? So is America going to say, "Oh, we're not going to force our way of life on them"? So that's
Right.
ridiculous.
Okay, I understand where you're trying to go with this, but the reality is it all leads back to what we're trying to say earlier, what you were alluding to without putting too fine a point on it. For Muslims to move forward as a people, Islam must be abolished.
Unfortunately, that's the only way. Now, abolished or recreated. Recreated. It's like you can create another version of Islam
Updated,
where
updated
is
with the modern world, basically.
it's like we can do it. I believe it's doable. What we need is enforcement and education system and a system that controlled the religious speech. And with the globalization and social media today, I think this is what I call the mission of Project X, my organization: desanctifying the sacred, the religion that keeps giving violence and hatred and aggression and slavery. So, what do I mean by desanctifying? Desanctifying is I'm not afraid anymore of this, of criticizing this, of not believing this. I can identify as a Muslim, but I don't really care for what Muhammad did or didn't, what he said. You know what I mean? It's like I need the Islamic world to achieve this intellectual or mental state where I don't need to leave Islam in order to embrace universal values. How do I do that? Desanctify Islam in the mind of Muslims.
I
I don't want
understand.
them to leave Islam. I don't want to abolish Islam completely. Just desanctify it. Okay, we are reading the Quran. Muhammad married his daughter-in-law. That's ridiculous. I'm not going to defend Muhammad, but I'm a Muslim. That's. I want Muslims to reach this.
It's progressing as a people, as a culture, really is what it is,
How
right?
do you do that? By telling the truth
Right.
to Muslims, not by protecting Islam, not by saying Islam is the religion of peace. Yeah, you don't help Muslims.
I
You
understand.
are keeping them locked in.
Yeah, I get everything you're saying. I understand, look, this is a conversation you and I can have for I think 2,000 hours or more easily. Let's talk about your Project X because I did want to get to that. You brought it up a little bit. Can you please explain what it's about and what you're doing to help educate people about Islam? Because I know that I was going through it. Like you have some videos. You do a lot of articles and blogs. You write books, and you have a new one that you've written that's coming out or you're working on. So can you please go go over Project X a little bit more for us?
Project X um, is the result of the response I witnessed after October 7th. The response in the West, the sympathizing with the terrorist, and the attack, um, the attacks on the one democratic state that is fighting a war on behalf of the rest of the free world, the misunderstanding of the nature of the conflict with Islam. It's a civilizational war. It is not resistance. It is not social justice. So Project X is simply an attempt to educate the West about the nature of the threat Islam poses to the future of the Western civilization, and at the same time to challenge Muslims to desanctify the sacred history, sacred text. We do that through producing knowledge, analysis, media production, and our end goal is also to influence the lawmaker in order to protect the Western values. Because if Islam is given the power of legislation, you are jeopardizing the entire system. It's going to collapse. So Project X is still at the beginning. I have received support from friends who believe in what Project X is doing. We have board members. We have a 501c3, but we are still at the beginning. We're trying to raise funds so that we can produce more content, do more advocacy and lobbying. And I believe this is going to be big because the way people are looking at this is shifting. For a certain period of time, they were like, "Oh, yeah, it's Islamophobia. I don't want to get there."
Right.
But now people are coming to realize, no, this is real threat. This is real thing. We need to look. You need to stare in the eyes of the threat and tackle it. You cannot just keep ignoring it. So people can get to understand what I'm doing by reading my content on X, Dan Burmawi, and go to the website project-ex.org. They can subscribe to support the work, or they can donate to Project X. And hopefully on October 7th, my book is going to be released about Islam, Israel, the conflict, the Western civilization, the future of the West, Reformation in Islam, what to do, what not to do. It will give people an idea about what we're doing. But I think it's going to be something big in the future because, as I said, the threat is growing and people are waking up.
How is your organization right now, given this, because you're still in the building stages, right? How are you reaching people right now? How is your message getting to the people at the moment? What avenues are you taking to get in front of people? And are you doing speeches and speaking events? Are you talking to politicians?
Yeah, some speeches, interviews, podcasts like this one. Mainly, I try to comment. I provide commentary on a world event that's connected to Islam, to the West. I try to provide commentary whenever there's something misunderstood or people don't connect the dots. And the reception was phenomenal. In almost 6 months, we got more than 70 million views for our content and 60,000 followers on X alone. And people are resonating with the content and with the fresh perspective and the unique analysis that Project X is providing.
How many of those supporters do you think are people who are labeled as Muslim themselves?
Supporter?
Yeah, supporting what you're doing. Because we spoke earlier and, there's people that don't necessarily align with it, but they're born into it and, they're just stuck in that cycle.
Yeah.
Do you think you're getting any support from those type of
I
people?
believe I get support. I get a lot of support from ex-Muslims, or I get messages. I actually have a lot of these private messages from Muslims who still identify as Muslim, but they're not Muslims.
Right,
So
right.
I wouldn't. I doubt that I have support from Muslims because, as I said again,
Well,
there's
yeah, no, I guess I meant X or people who are not
you
wanting
have
to be
you
that.
can't identify as a Muslim and tolerate or entertain criticism.
No, I understand. You said that earlier. I
You
what I
know,
was what I was getting at is a person who we call a Muslim, right? Like, I'm a Westerner,
yeah,
I
yeah.
look at you and I say you're a Muslim. It doesn't mean that person. Yeah.
At least 10% of my supporters, my followers, are Muslims who no more see
Right.
Islam as their religion or what informs their worldview.
That's that's good, honestly, for everything that
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
trying to do to educate.
millions of Muslims are leaving Islam every year. Trust me, millions. I'm not exaggerating. I have been involved.
I've heard that being said. I don't know the real numbers, but I mean, that's
I
cr
know it firsthand.
yeah,
Yeah,
is that a result of just people realizing that, they're being stuck in the past and under an authoritarian way of life?
the internet has given them a chance to
Well, right, it opened them up to the modern world, like what's going on.
to see different narratives.
Mhm.
Um, Evangelism, the church is doing a lot of work in the Islamic world. I have been involved in Christian ministry for 15 years. I have seen thousands and thousands leaving Islam. But the problem is procreation. It's like birth rates.
I
Doesn't
literally just talked about that with my the guest I just had literally yesterday. We just talked about this.
doesn't yeah, doesn't
Why don't
matter.
you go ahead and elaborate on that, please?
In the West, when you plan to have a child, you plan for their future. You calculate how much it's going to cost you and your partner, and you end up with one or two. Except if you're wealthy or middle class American conservative who cares about big families. But in general, in Europe, in the West, we have the numbers are crazy down. In order to sustain the numbers, the rate of birth or the birth rate in the West should be 2.8. What we have to do is 2.1 or 2.2. The Islamic country, it's different. Some Islamic countries are being affected by, again, globalization, life demands, but they don't think the same way the Westerners do. So they look at it as a blessing from the Lord, of course, just like Judeo-Christians look at it, but God is going to provide. So, and it's a commandment from the Prophet Muhammad. Fill the earth because I want to boost in you on the day of in the latter day. But in Somalia, the birth rate is 6.9. In other Islamic countries, I wrote a piece about this. 4.5, 5.2, it's crazy numbers. But what is scary is when you look at the birth rate in Europe and you compare the indigenous people and Muslim immigrants, you see the trend and the pattern and what's going to happen in the next 10, 20, 30 years from now. It's very predictable, very easy to predict. very clear. You don't really have to be smart to realize that Europe is lost beyond redemption. There's no way to get Europe back. But there's still hope for the United States of America. And that's why I'm genuinely concerned about the future of the Western civilization. So, yeah,
It's a great replacement. Just through procreation, really. Um, before we end, I want to talk a little bit more, but I want to get your thoughts on Palestine, Israel,
yeah,
and the history thereof. A lot of people, think that Palestine was always a nation, and it was always a region that referred to many different tribes and people within a certain area. But there's a lot of revisionist history going on, and people cherry picking, photos and articles and throughout the timeline to try to justify what Palestine really is. Now, October 7th, you brought that up quite a bit already, multiple times, but we didn't really get too deep into it. So, to me, it's important, and I talk to other people that are in the intel community, so I get other information about what's going on and how this is, what's happening there. But the reality is, the war started with Hamas. It was a terrorist organization that has control of a people. The problem with the area of Gaza is everyone is captured; they really can't leave. So, can you give a little more insight from your perspective, someone who really has a lot more knowledge of the region than I do, as to what is really happening there and who is to blame? Because everyone is anti-Semitic, anti-Israel right now. Israel starving everybody, killing the children, bombing indiscriminately. And I just want to get your point of view on the situation.
As a Jordanian, an Arab, a former Muslim, I can tell you that Israel has been fighting a defensive war since the creation of the State of Israel. Palestine was manufactured in order to serve the ambitions of Islam. The Muslim Brotherhood, they wanted to combat the cultural impact of the British and the French mandate in the region. They didn't like the modernity that the British brought to the region. So they had to come up with a cause to clock their ambition without threatening the newly introduced nation state that has already formed in the region. So they didn't want to challenge the new states or to be seen as a threat, but at the same time call for the reestablishment of the caliphate. To understand the Arab-Israeli conflict, you need to understand that in 1924, for the first time in Islamic history, Muslims found themselves without a caliphate, without an Islamic empire. And with the introduction of the nation state concept to the region, the Islamic empire was fragmented. And this was a theological rupture. It was not only a political project, it has consequences. And those consequences is the erasure of the rule of Allah from earth. The Islamic State represent the rule of Allah. And if we don't have Islamic State, we don't have, Allah is not there. So what happened is that by the end of the 19th century, the Ottoman Empire, which is the Islamic Caliphate, was weakened by Europe, by different elements, external and internal. And Arabs, who also were persecuted by the Ottomans, they were neglected, so that the Ottoman were not representing the true caliphate, the true Islamic caliphate. So Sharif Hussein bin Ali of Mecca, he is the descendant of Prophet Muhammad. He conspired with other Arab entities in order to relocate the caliphate, not to destroy the caliphate. They wanted to relocate it. That's it. They wanted it to remain Islamic, just changed the center from Istanbul to Mecca. And based on that, they had the agreement with the British so that the Arabs would fight alongside the British against the Ottomans, but in return, they would get their state, their caliphate. The British betrayed the Arabs. They fragmented the caliphate. They introduced the nation-state concept. Was that a colonial conspiracy? No. It was the natural trajectory of history. The world was moving forward from empires into nation-states.
Empires and tribes to nations.
So the British were not plotting against Islam or against the Arabs. They just realized that decentralization of authority and power is the way to go forward. And that's what happened in Europe after the Westphalia Treaty and the creation of the nation states in Europe. Every single empire was divided. So from an Islamic perspective, that was not progress. That was a war against the faith, against religion. So instantly, an Islamic movement formed that was called the Muslim Brotherhood in 1928 as a response to that. And calls to re-establish the caliphate was everywhere. Muslims couldn't imagine themselves without a caliphate. Now, the region where we have today Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Jordan, Israel, it was part of the Islamic Empire for 13 centuries. Never, ever there was, during the Islamic history, a nation state. There was no nation state. It was like all just part of the caliphate. There was never a state called Palestine at all. There was never called a state called Jordan. It's just names for geographical spots. Syria, Lebanon. It's the name of a geographical place. It doesn't represent the state, a nation, ethnicity, nothing. What happened is when the British introduced the nation-state concept, Lebanon formed as a nation-state. Christians in Lebanon worked with the French, with General Gouraud, and they had a state. Syrians, the French wanted to divide Syria into 5 different states, but the different Syrian movements, they united, and eventually we ended up with one nation. It's called Syria. The Iraqi people did the same with the British. Jordan, it was given to the son of Sharif Hussein, who was betrayed by the British, and Jordan became a nation. And Israel, where the Jews were living, because the Jews in 1909, 40 years before the creation of the state of Israel, they built Tel Aviv city, for example. They had institutions, they built schools. The lie that they migrated to the land after the Holocaust or during the Holocaust, running away from persecution.
They were always part of that area.
They were running away from pogroms.
They were an ancient tribal people.
But that it doesn't mean anything, because at the end of the day, Christians in Lebanon ended up with a state. The Jews in Israel ended up with a state. And they fought for their independence against the British, the same way the Lebanese fought against the French. So every other country was allowed to have a state except Israel, except the Jewish people. Anyway, there was no Palestine at all. Palestine was the name of that geographical place. And everybody inside that region was called Palestinian. The Jews were called Palestinian. We have Palestinian Post. It became Jerusalem Post later. The Palestinian Airway, the Palestinian Flight Company or something like that. It's a Jewish. It was founded by the Jews. Palestinian schools. They were established by Jews. So when you read on the coin the word Palestine and they use it and say, you see, Palestine was there. It's
Right.
ridiculous. The British did that because it's a colonial name. It was used by the Romans, or it
Yes.
was the Romans give it that name, but the British just used that name. But it didn't mean anything. There was no Palestinian president. There was no Palestinian. Uh, there there was no nation state in the region. To claim that there was
What?
a state is ridiculous.
Yeah,
There
Dan.
was no
Why?
nation.
Why? Why do people not want to accept this history? Because I went down this rabbit hole, and a lot of everything you said, I have researched and read myself, and some of it you had to dig for because again, there's a lot of revisionist history out there right now. And in the
And don't
case,
forget, the Arabs also migrate to the Jewish areas.
right?
Actually, read. There are different reports. Actually, there's a chapter about this conflict in my book where I explain all of this. Arabs migrate to the Jewish areas because of prosperity that they brought with them from Europe. Agriculture, development, wages were higher in the Jewish areas. The whole Palestinian identity was hijacked, manufactured, and hijacked by Arabs, um, because there was no way to claim the land without having some roots, and the roots um and actually there's a confusion. They're confused all the time. It's like, we are the Canaanites, we are
Yeah,
the sons of the Jews who lived here and converted
right.
to Islam. Where they keep trying to manufacture this identity. But anyway, I want people to go look up the Arab Federation 1958 flag. In 1958, Jordan and Iraq, they joined together um, in a union, and they had a flag for that union. It is the Palestinian flag. But that union didn't last for except a few months. And then it was dismantled. And the Palestinians picked up the same flag and they use it and they say, oh, this is the Palestinian flag. It's ridiculous. Anyway, yeah, there were Arabs living in the land. I'm not denying that. But um, that doesn't constitute a state. There, it's like a group of people were living in that land, and that Israeli independence declaration, if you read it today, it still has these words: "We invite Arabs to come and coexist with us and build this nation together." It's written in the Declaration of Independence. But the following day, after this declaration, 5 Arab countries attacked Israel in 1948 after rejecting the United Nations uh, proposal. So,
What's the what is the why is there such a hate for the nation of Israel? Okay, that's one question. The other one is, what do you say to those who blame everything on the Zionists? Okay, many people believe that everything that's going on right now with Gaza, Palestine, is
yeah,
because 70 some odd years ago or whatever, that these Jewish people who weren't even in the region, were in Europe, came over to displace people and kick them out of their homes. It's it's a skewed view of the actual history of what really happened. But, as someone who's not from the area, and when I try to talk about these things, I get dismissed, or people tell me that I don't understand what I'm talking about. Even though you can research and read everything, you could read what led to it. You could read how the Ottoman Empire and the people who consider themselves Palestinian today actually sided with the Ottoman Empire to help get rid of the Jewish people from the land and expel them so that they can take it over. Where else were they going to go?
yeah,
And I have a thing that I always go to. It's like people will then make the argument, well, they were conquered. No, they weren't conquered. You know why? They never accepted defeat. They always had a plan to come back. Those who are conquered are the ones who accepted their defeat, accepted the fact that, oh, well, I guess we're a different people now, and now we're going to have to give in. But the Jewish people never did. So, can you expand on that and also explain, the fallacy in what people try to identify as Zionism being at the root of this situation and this conflict?
Um, well, the Jews are hated for too many different reasons. And among these reasons is the fact that the Jews survived 2,000 years of persecution and their resilience. And they were able to rebuild after everything. So, unfortunately, we have this tendency to want greatness and glory for only ourselves. If somebody else is successful, yeah, we might be happy for him, but we want it for ourselves. So, unfortunately, people might say they can say whatever they want, but this is reality. Um, there's some kind of envy there. Jews are successful after the Holocaust. They are representation in every single industry or progress. They're everywhere. So there's one of the reasons. Other reason is the radical left has its ideology built on grievance and victimhood, and Israel defies that ideology, destroys it. Israel is not built on victimhood. Israel is built on resilience, and so again, they don't like that. They don't like the fact that Israel is survived everything and it's successful, and not only that, it's powerful. It's becoming one of the most powerful states in the world. It's like, and you have religious hatred, of course, in Islam that was inherited by Muslims in the sacred scripture and in the history itself. So there are too many reasons. I can't list a lot of them, but none of them is legit or right. It's all based in false perceptions and the Zionism. To accuse the Zionism movement of atrocities and to be the reason behind is ridiculous, because the Zionist movement started as a response to persecution. It was not established as a biblical apocalyptical movement that wanted to bring the Jews back to Israel. And no, it was a response to what was happening to the Jews in Eastern Europe and in Russia. And that's why the pioneers of the Zionist movement didn't care about where this Jewish state would be. They just wanted a state because they wanted self-determination. And that's why Uganda was proposed by Theodor Herzl to the Zionist Council at the beginning. So the Zionist movement is simply defined as the right of the Jewish people to self-determination, because the Jews have tried everything to assimilate, to coexist, to never worked. So they realized, okay, we're done. We need our state. We need to govern ourselves. That's it. And the Zionist movement is trying to protect the state of Israel. And that's AIPAC. AIPAC is controlling America. They don't care about controlling America. And I'm not funded by any Zionist movement or AIPAC. I actually applied for a job at AIPAC, and they rejected me. So, but what they're clear about their mission: we want to keep the Congress pro-Israel. Why? Because we want to protect the state of Israel, which exists in an ocean of enemies. So the Zionist movement is not trying to control the world, and the Zionists are not trying to expand, you idiots. The Israel, for the past 77 years, gave up land that legally acquired after defending their country against enemies. They gave up Sinai. They gave up southern Lebanon. They gave up Gaza. That is the most, it's like the failure of the Zionist project is crazy, is astonishing. It's like they failed in their expansionist project. It's like, no, Israel, the Zionist movement just wants to protect the Jewish people. So we need to understand this alliance between the radical movement, the radical left movement, and Islam. I had to say this. They don't care about Islam. They don't care about Palestine. They don't care about Muslims. They don't care about children. They don't care about women. They care about any tool that could be utilized to attack the Western world, the Western civilization, capitalism. Because in their blood, there is this, it's a virus that makes them see that the Western system, the power systems in the West, are responsible for not creating their utopia. They're the obstacle. They want to create a utopia, and by taking the West, they could achieve that. And Islam and Palestine is only utilized to achieve that. So what we are experiencing today is not only anti-Semitism. If we only reduce it to anti-Semitism, we miss the point. It's not. It's anti-Western, anti-America, anti-freedom, liberty, capitalism, individual rights. So that's how we must see what's going on today.
Right. In the Zionist movement, absolutely correct what you said. It was a both a response twofold to me. It was a response to their treatment and a persecution in Europe. Also, it was a long-standing need to get back to their land, which they were displaced from. You know, that's why they ended up in Europe in the first place. So the narrative that, you know, they're wrong for wanting their land back, that they never actually gave up or forgot about, to me has always been ridiculous. And correct.
No,
I mean, in the
I'm sorry.
declaration,
I want to add one thing to your point.
yeah,
Going back to the land, it was actually, if you look at historical records, prior to 1917, before the Sykes-Picot Agreement, which divided the Islamic Empire into nation states, before that was revealed, it was actually leaked by Bolshevists. They revealed it. It was a secret treaty. But anyway, before it was revealed, no historical records of any projection, any resistance from Muslims to the migration of the Jews to the land, except in 1881, the Ottomans resisted that, not because they didn't want the Jews to return back to their land. No. But because they were terrified of national movements. There was a national movement being formed in Greece, and they were afraid of national movements to start erupting everywhere in the Ottoman Empire. So they didn't want the Jews to return to Palestine because they didn't want them to form a national movement. And that movement would be contagious to Arabs, to different nations. So that's the reason why the Ottomans stopped the migration of Jews or resisted it to Palestine. But we don't have any historical records of Muslims or Arabs. I'll tell you why. Because here's the point.
Oh, okay, sorry, go ahead.
No, this is like, the point is, why there is no resistance? Because the caliphate was in place. When the caliphate is in place, the assumption is, we don't care if the Jews return to the land. They will be subjugated to the Islamic rule. They will live under the Islamic rule. The problem is when the Jews wanted sovereignty, it's not about their existence. If Benjamin Netanyahu today convert to Islam, the whole Palestinian conflict will end in a second. It will be gone immediately.
So
So
to back up really quick, that's a good point you just made, actually. But to back up really quick, before the Ottoman Empire came in, the people of Israel or the Jewish people were already there, right? So they were driven out by the Ottoman Empire. It was live under our rule or leave. That's what happened before the Ottoman Empire got there. Once they got there, they drove them out. It's like
that
you live under our rule, you live under our subjugation, or you're out of here, right? Um,
the Jews kept a connection to the land
yeah,
since their connection to the land never ceased. At a certain point, they could be like a few hundred people. At a
yes,
certain point, it would be 1,000. Doesn't matter. They kept the connection.
yes,
But
agreed.
anyway,
Yeah,
it's not about it's
that's the history.
99% of them migrated in the 20th century. That doesn't change the fact that they had uh, as much right as everybody else in the region to form a state because they were a group of people living on a geographical spot, and everybody was starting a state. So why not the Jews who were persistent on the fact that they had to rule themselves? They don't want to be ruled by someone else. And
Right.
if they accepted an Islamic rule, there would be no problem at all. There would have been no problem. It's like, okay,
And if they converted today, all these wars would end. And then what? It would absolutely be a newfound focus by everyone who is under the rule of Islam to now focus on the rest of the world and take the rest of the world over.
they will forget all the arguments they have made since the beginning about identity and heritage and land.
Yeah,
They will forget everything.
it all go away.
If Bibi Netanyahu tonight convert to Islam, I'm not talking about all the Israeli people. No, just the ruler, the king of the land who rules the land. If he converts to Islam, people in Syria, Iraq, Jordan, Egypt, Algeria would be offering the Jewish people lands, not the Jewish people. Bibi Netanyahu, they would be offering him lands, like come and take more. Because they don't care about land. It's not about land. Never been about the land. It's a manufactured lie.
That's interesting. And it's crazy because if you look at geographically, like Israel, the nation state is such a small sliver of land compared to the rest of the Arab world. It really is. Do you believe that what's going on with the conflict right now, though, is Israel really doing everything they're saying to the people of Palestine or living in what's considered Palestine today? Are they indiscriminately bombing? Are they starving people? Are they killing innocents indiscriminately? Or is that a lot of manufactured lies and propaganda?
So I believe that October 7 happened on Iranian orders to sabotage the Saudi-Israeli peace talks. I'm 100% certain of that. Because a Saudi-Israeli peace treaty would have meant the excuse of Iran to be in the region is vanish. It's like if Saudi is making peace with Israel and the Palestinian conflict is coming to an end, then why Iran has any reason to stay in Lebanon and Syria and Iraq and Yemen? So they had to kill the peace talks between Israel and Saudi Arabia. Now, the retaliation of Israel, and this is an important point, the retaliation of Israel is not the reason why Israel is being accused of genocide and all the accusations that we see today. You know why? Because on October 7, people were protesting on the streets of London and New York in different cities against Israel, even though Israel did not retaliate yet. And even Israel,
I remember, yeah.
Even the Jewish people were still burying the bodies, looking for the bodies, trying to identify the bodies.
Yeah, you're right. They were already protesting against Israel. They didn't even do anything yet. They didn't even retaliate.
It's not true that Israel is being accused of a genocide because of what happened after October 7. No, it's being accused of genocide because it serves the narrative that different movements and the Holy Alliance in the West uh, embraces. It's their narrative. Now, when we talk about the retaliation scale, I want you to imagine if Bashar al-Assad was leading this war in Gaza on the same scale that we have seen in Syria between 2011 and 2024. And you take into consideration the size of the land, the size of Syria, and the size of Gaza, and the number of population. The death rate would be, or the number of casualties would be, I have calculated that, I think it's 1.2 millions. So if Israel retaliated or responded on the scale of Bashar al-Assad, we should have more than 1.2 casualties in Gaza. But we have, according to the Ministry of Health, the Hamas Ministry of Health, we have 50, 60,000. Okay. Now, in the 60,000s, how many people in Gaza died naturally since October 7th? 2 years. How many natural deaths we have? I think we have zero. It's all blamed on Israel. So when God decides that somebody's life has ended, oh, let's blame Israel for it. It's God, it's nature, it's age. If somebody dies in a car accident, it doesn't matter. It's like the bucket that has all the death in it. Number one. Number two, how many Hamas terrorists died? According to the Israeli reports, probably 25,000. So how many civilians, innocent civilians, really died in Gaza? I'm going to assume it's 10,000. Okay? It's a huge number. Heartbreaking. But here's the thing. Israel is in a moral dilemma. What Israel is going to do? If Israel let Hamas stay, live, regroup, another October 7 is going to happen. And people don't understand what October 7 represents in the imagination of the Jewish people. It is the Holocaust, a mini Holocaust. It is something that no non-Jews can understand. Are you a Jew? Have you? Has your life been shaped by that event? No. So you don't understand October 7. I don't understand October 7 and how the Jews see it. It was reminder that the possibility of another Holocaust is there. And there's a promise, never again. So the scale of retaliation should be understood through this lens, through the lens of survival of a nation that has been under the threat of destruction and eradication for a very long time. So I don't believe the retaliation of Israel after October 7 was disproportionate. I think it was restrained, very, very restrained, and very calculated. Israel tried to avoid civilian casualties. I believe this from the depth of my heart. And Israel is being held to higher standards than every other country, every other group. It's like no Israeli soldier is allowed to joke with another soldier as they are fighting these barbaric terrorists. if there is a 5 seconds video of 2 Israeli soldiers making a joke or misbehaving, that is condemnation against Israel. It's ridiculous when you have mothers taking a pride in installing the suicide bomb vest on their children, and you condemn Israel for an Israeli soldier wearing a bra as they fight in Gaza. It's like just kidding, playing around. It's ridiculous. The moral dehumanization of Israel. It's so yeah. I again, trust me, George. I'm not saying any of these things because I'm paid by anyone. I am honest and authentic as a former Muslim, as an Arab Jordanian who lived among Palestinians for years. This is how I see this conflict, and this is how I see Israel. Israel is the only state today in the Middle East that is trying to protect the Jews. You could say they have national interests, of course. Who doesn't? But nevertheless, Israel is protecting the Druze from a massacre, from being sold in the slave market of the Islamic State, while Turkey is watching, Iraq is watching, Jordan is watching, Egypt is watching, United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia. Nobody is coming to the rescue of the Druze. And people have the audacity to criticize Israel and condemn Israel, this nation that has helped the Christians in Lebanon and fought alongside them against the terrorists of the PLO. Israel is the only country that is really caring for the minorities in the Middle East, trying to save them from Islamic barbarism. Yet the world is condemning Israel. So you have that.
Oh, well, I think with that, we should probably wrap it up. We talked about a lot of different things that are very relevant. Great conversation. Thank you very much. Before you go, though, please tell everybody more about where they can find you, title of your book, etc. Go ahead and let everybody know about that, please.
I haven't decided on a title yet, but it's going to be about Islam, Israel, and the future of the West. So it's going to cover a lot of topics. It's going to talk about how Islam is a political ideology. Why? It's not going to be another book about information that you could find in 1,000 other books. No, it's going to be unique analysis, fresh perspective into the Arab-Israeli conflict, why Islam is incompatible with the West, why Islam is a threat to the West. Also, the Judeo-Christian alliance that should save the West, I would say, and the Abrahamic religion, why Islam is not an Abrahamic religion, and Reformation in Islam, is it possible, how to respond to this threat, how to understand the geopolitics of the Middle East in light of all these. So the book is going to be available for pre-order on September 7, and the release date is October 7. And I choose this date for obvious reasons, of course. You can find me on www.project-ex.org. If you go to this website, that's my Substack. I encourage you to subscribe to receive my articles to your inbox, and follow me on X. You'll also find the link on my Substack page. Thank you so much, George.
No, thank you for your time. I enjoyed this, and I will stay in touch with you. It's very informative, and I do have a big interest into the history of the region and what is going on there. So again, I know I pushed back a little, but I was just trying to get the conversation to go another direction so we can hear more perspective from your point of view.
Great. It was really great. And
I appreciate it. I do. I appreciate your time.
Honesty is a one-way gate to hell.